Hey, what's going on, guys? Hope everyone will be fine, and welcome back to the part number 2. So in this video, I'm going to explain to you about the installation that we are required for the Laravel. So the first thing I'm going to do here is to right click on it and click on the Git Bash here. And I'm using here the terminal of Git Bash. You can use here the basic CMD. So in order to install that, you just need to go to the git-scm.com in order to install that. So on my desktop, the first command that I need to run to install my Laravel project, so you need to type here composer create dash project Laravel /Laravel, and the name of the application, I'm going to give it the full stack underscore auth, right? So whatever the name you want to give here, so the name of my project, which should be full stack underscore auth, right? So there are a few things if you're a very beginner and if you have no idea about the installation. So you first need to install the composer, a dependency manager for the PHP. So all you need to do is to just simply do the installation depending on the OS you have. If you're using Windows, you can use the Windows installation on the base of the if you are using Mac, you can use the Mac installation, as well as with the you have to install the code editor. In my case, I'm going to use here VS Code, which is amongst the most popular code editor, right? And then you have to install the XAMPP or the VAMP, whatever you have. Just simply download that. And I have already running up my localhost /phpMyAdmin. Make sure your XAMPP server should be running, and the most important thing that I'm going to use here is the Postman. So make sure you can install from the postman.com, and that is basically helpful for testing our API, right? As simple as that. So I will be right back once this installation will be done, and then we will continue our required steps. Alright guys, so the installation has been done, and now I need to just open up the using the VS Code. So first I need to go to the directory that we have. So we have full stack underscore auth. So just give that and just move into the VS Code. So for if you're using the Git Bash, you simply just press the code and the space dot, and this is going to open up the VS Code for you, right? Alright, so the first thing that I'm going to do is to create my route, and with the help of the route, we are able to create the controller. We define the function. So we are going to do each and everything step by step. So first thing I'm going to do here is to go inside my routes, which should be our root directory folder, and inside my api.php, I'm going to define my very first route. So the first route that I'm going to define here is the post request for the registration. So first we will have to create the registration process, which includes very basic tables, basic column, which includes email, the name and the password, right? So let's go see that after that. So let's create here a route with the name of register, and we have to define the name of the controller, which I have to create yet. So let's give it the name of user controller and define the name of the function, which should be register, right? So we define the controller and the function. So already my server is running on PHP Artisan serve port number 8000. So in order to you can also use the VS Code terminal. So just simply click on here and to add another option for adding your commands for the terminal. Alright, so here I'm going to create my controller. So PHP Artisan make controller and user controller. Alright, so just simply press enter, and you see the controller been created successfully, and app HTTP controller and user controller. Alright, so inside here I'm going to define my function, which is for the registration process. So let's define here. So public function register. And definitely we are doing a registration process, and we have a post request. So in order to have a post request, we have to define the request inside our method parameters. So let's define the request. So request and the request, and I also need to define my user model. So use app /user, right? So in order to check the migration, which is created by default, so all you need to do is to go inside your database migrations, and there we go. So you could see here the create underscore users underscore table. So the main tables that we need here in this whole series is the name, email, and the password, right? And so these are the major 3 fields that we are required for the registration. So we don't need to change anything else. So it's fine, right? So we have to also connect our database. So for that we have to go to our .env file, and let's first define the name of the database. So give it the name of fullstack_auth, right? As simple as that. Just copy the name of the database, and if you have opened up your database by simply localhost/phpMyAdmin, and let's create a new one, and I just give it the database name which I have defined already in my .env, and I don't need to create the custom table, so we can run by the help of migrations. So let's migrate the table. So php artisan migrate, and this is going to migrate all the tables. Right now, if I go back to the database, and you see now we have our users table, which includes the ID, name, and the email. Right, that's fine. Okay, so now we have set up our database, and let's define the registration process. So we also include our user model, so with the help of use app/user, and now let's define here the let's create the user first. So in order to create the user, we have to just simply create here user :create. So this method will help us to create the table fields for us. So I define here the array for the name. So let's first define the name. So name, and we have to give it the request. So $request-name. Same for the email. So let's define here email, and $request-email, and for my password, so the password that I need here in my case, it should not be the varchar or only the numbers or the digits. It should be something like a bcrypt or something like hash. Let's define here a method of bcrypt, and with the help of that we're gonna have a long string password, which will be very helpful. So let's define inside the bcrypt, and for that I also need to do one more step. Actually, I forget to bring this arrow. So let's define that first, and I need to include. So if I just simply try to create that, it will give me an error. So for that I need to define that facades. So let's define here on top. So use illuminate and spot facades, and let's define here hash. It should be facades/hash, and the facades F should be capital, right? So that's fine, and close it with the semicolon. All right, now we have to also check if that user is created successfully. The email should not be repeating again and again. It should not duplicate, right? So let's first test that with the postman. I need to just simply define the response as well. So let's define the response down underneath that. So response, and inside response I'm going to give it the status, which later on will be very much important, because with the help of when we are doing the front end stuff, so that's where we have to apply a check which indicates that one means that it's the status is true, or on based of 0 we means that something is not fine. So on when we are doing the front end side, that's where the status is very helpful. So we also have to define the message. So we have to define the message inside this, and let's give it the message of user registered successfully. All right, and we also have to give the response code for the 200, which means that everything is successful. So also define here. So the response that I need to give here is a code, and let's define here 200. Actually, I don't need this. Yeah. Okay, so now that's fine, and now last thing that I need to do is to just simply return that. So in order to return the response, I just need to give here return response, and define in the JSON format, and let's pass the response. So let's have a look and see that whether we are able to create the registration process or not. So I'm going to open up my postman, and let's first check this out by just simply running the localhost and the port number, which is 8000, and the request, which is get, and let's first send the response in order to check. Yeah, everything is fine. Go to the preview. It's showing the Laravel, Now we have to check the post request for the registration. So for that, we are inside our routes. So if you go and see here, so we are inside our api.php. So whenever you are inside your api.php file, so make sure, remember that you should have the path for the URL, which should be /API, and then the name of the URL that you pass, so which is the register. And because we are we are registering the form, we are passing the request. So I need to go to the body, and let's go inside our the body, and I also need to change that to the raw, and inside raw I need to show things in the JSON format. So just simply define that, and let's create here the very first field. So we have to define here name. So let's give it the name of John. So John, and I need to pass here the email. So let's define here the email of john@gmail.com, and let's also pass the password. So I'm gonna pass here the password 123456, which should be inside your double quote. That's fine. All right, so let's gonna send a response and check whether we are working or not. So it says that undefined database. Actually, I need to again close my server and run that again, because we have migrate our tables. So for that, anything which is inside your .env, so you have to run your server again. So now I just refresh that, and let's go inside my Postman and just try to run that again. So you see now, if I just go to the pretty version, so you see the status is 1, which indicates that something is fine, and message which shows the user registered successfully, and the code 200, which means that it's okay. So it's, you can see the response is also 200, right? So it's a standard response for successful HTTP request. All right, so there is a one issue that if I just try to keep sending the request again and again, yeah, the data is actually allowing it says that the duplicate entry is entered, but how we can restrict with the help of API. So let's go and jump and just avoid that issue. In order to resolve that, we have to go back to our user controller, and just right on top of it, I'm going to define here a condition. So the user, and check the user where. So we have our where clause, and check that email, and whatever the request that we are passing here, so I'm going to give it the request for the email, and that first means that it will check the very first email for the, so get means that it will check the collection, and for the first it will check whatever the request, whether it matched up with the existing email. So let's do and have apply here a condition. So if that user exists, that means that we have to show the response. So I'm going to copy it from here, and let's define inside here and give it the response of 0. That means that yeah, the email exists, right? So I'm going to give it the message here, email already exists, and I'm going to give it the code for the 409, which basically is the status code that something exists, right? Which is keep duplicating, right? So that's a very small portion of it, which will check that if that email exists already, so it will not allow us to create another duplicated email, as well as with the help of the migration. So because we have a unique here inside my database migration, so with the help of this unique method, which will not allow us to add the duplicated email, but we have to show the response when we are working with the front end side. We have to show that message to our front end side, so that the email is duplicated. So that's where it will be really helpful. So now if I just try to send the request again, and let me have to check that so let's try to run the request again. It still keep showing the same message. Yeah, I just forget one thing here, that rather I should needs to, because now we have two different conditions, so I need to pass it inside the else, that if that user exists, then just that's fine, and if it's not, so I just want to cut this out and paste it inside the else condition, and now everything will be worked successfully. Now let's give the send response, and you see now it will shows that email already exists. Now if I just try to change that to john12@gmail.com, it says user registered successfully. Let's change another one. Now let's give it here AB Nation, and let's pass here abnation@gmail.com and send the request, and you see now the user registered successfully. Now if I just try to add again, now it says the email already exists. Now let's go back to the database and check this out. You see now the password is hash coded, and we have our email, which are all unique. So that is all for the registration process. So the second process that I'm going to do just after a while, I just want to take some 1-minute break, and then we'll be right back to the login process, where we have to find out the documentation. You need to follow the steps. So I just want to show you the link that I have. So just simply type here JWT in Laravel on Google, and you have to just click on the very first link of it. Very helpful link. So everything is here inside this documentation. We just need to follow all those steps step by step, and we have to generate our very first login with the help of JWT. So I will be just right back in just few seconds. Alright guys, so let's move to the JWT auth, and I want to give this link in the description so you can easily follow this documentation. A very simple and very easier one. So if you watch other videos which are a little bit complex, I believe, so it's a very straightforward rule, and it's not something which is complex. A very basic steps to follow, and that's how you can just simply generate the token. So first we just go directly jump to it. So JWT, it is used to protect the routes from the API, and that way you can fetch that token and you can make the request using token to access the protected routes. So that's what we are going to do. And so the first thing that you need to do is just copy that composer require, and just open your git bash, or you can even use your VS Code terminal, so whatever you feel comfortable. So I'm going to use here that, and so that's simply actually I just need to, yeah. So we are going to run the composer required /JWT-auth. And if that's the first step, and then I don't need to provide that inside my, or I need to, let's just copy that. Maybe there is a few differences in the versions, but let's add that inside the config app.php. So I'm going to go inside my config, and let's follow up the steps from here. So config, and there we go. So we have the app.php, and we need to add that inside the providers. So let's go inside the providers array and just define that right underneath that, or that's fine. Okay, so we define our provider, and let's wait for the extension. Once it's installed, yeah, it's just very much closed for the installation. Next we have to just simply grab this, and we have to run this command. So as long as it is taking time, then we have to follow the second step, where we have to generate the secret key. So first you have to install by the composer, add that to the service provider. So the two steps has been done. Now next we have to publish that configuration. So that's what I'm going to wait. Once this step is done, we have to generate that. All right, so it's almost going to done. Let's copy that and generating the optimized autoload files, and let's paste the next one. All right, so just simply press enter, and it's gonna publish it and inside your config. And we have to also generate the JWT secret key, and I have included a helper command to generate a key for you. So So this will update your .env file while something like JWT underscore secret equal to. So it is a key that will use to sign your tokens. So this will happen exactly, will depends on the algorithm that you choose to use. So simple. So just simply press enter. Actually not this command, we already run that. So just run the JWT underscore colon secret and just simply press enter, and this is going to generate the secret key for you, right? All right, so that's fine. Let's go to the .env, and so there we go, right? So that's where you could see, so we have our JWT underscore secret key generated successfully. All right, now we have done those steps. Next we have to just press the next and just follow those steps. So I don't need those bootstrap file changes, just skip that all and just move to the another one. So that's where, which is very important. So you have to open up your user.php model. So let's go inside your app, HTTP, and go to your user.php, right? And that's where I'm going to define few things. So on top of it, we have to define, so first I have to define here, use illuminate auth foundation. Just copy that here and just paste it right here. Oh, actually not this one, it's already present. I need to define this, so just copy it from here after class user. So right after class user, just remove that and paste it right up here, the JWT subject. All right, so next we have to define the use time and JWT auth contract. So just right after that, I need to define the, all right, that's fine. Okay, so next we have to define those two methods. So just copy that from here, and right after the use notifiable, I need to, or just after that, just define those two methods. All right, so that's fine for that. For the update, we have updated our user model. Next we have to configure the auth guard. So let's go inside your, so here it's a note. This will only work if you're using Laravel 5.2 and above, and inside your config/auth.php file, you need to make few changes to configure Laravel to use the JWT guard, right? So go inside your config and JWT. So I need to go to the config, and next we have to go inside our, which one? So it's auth.php. Let's go inside here and do some few changes. So inside your defaults array, we have to change the guard to API, which was previously web. So change that to API. All right, so that's the first step. And next we have to change that inside the guards array, and let's go inside my guards array. So there it is. And inside guards, we have our API. There it is, the API. And we have to pass the driver, not the token. It should be JWT. So just simply define here, and the provider, which is users, that's fine. All right, so I think so we have very much it, and we have almost followed all the steps. So we don't need to do rest of the stuff because we are doing with R on. So let's go inside your user.php, or even before, you need to go to your routes, which should be routes and api.php. So that's where we are going to define our route for the login. All right, so let's define here. So route colon post. So it should be the post request, and define here login, and define here the name of the controller, which should be user controller @login. All right. So let's go inside the user controller by app, HTTP, controllers, user controller, and right after this method, I'm going to define here another method with the name of public function login, and define here request. So request $request, and right inside this method, I'm going to define here few things. So the first thing that we need is to apply the credentials. So the credentials that we need for the sake that we have to pass the request for the email and the password. So I need the request. Let's define request only, which will be only apply for the requested parameters that we are passing, which is the email and the password, right? And next we have to check using the try catch. Now I'm applying here something which is known as try catch exception. All right, so that will help us to check the JWT exception, which means that if the token is not generated, it is going to show us some message or something like that. So in order to define the exceptions, the first thing that I need here is just right after here, I need to define some daemon JWT auth. So use daemon, which should be given in the documentation, so you can easily grab that from there too. So I believe it should be it should be illuminate facades. No, that's not there, but I believe there's something. If you can find out somewhere, if I just go next to it, next, I believe there should be somewhere, right? So you can find out. So but we can define that manually right now. So use daemon slash and JWT auth. So JWT auth slash facades slash and JWT auth. All right. So they are actually, with having such way, it might be a reason of some errors, but I hope that I defined it fine. So use slash daemon slash JWT auth slash facades slash JWT auth, right? And next we have to define the exception, which should be very much similar to that. So just copy that, and right after the, just remove that facades and define here the exceptions. So exceptions, and the exceptions that we need is for the JWT exceptions. All right, so that's fine. Okay, so let's go and define inside the try catch, and we have to check if the email or password which is incorrect, that means that if that token is incorrect. So let's define here, if that JWT auth attempt, and inside that attempt we have to define here the credentials that will check the email and the password, and on that case we have to see that the email or the password is incorrect. And let's define here the exception for the JWT. So JWT exception, it should be JWT exceptions, not the exceptions, or it might be fine. So we can check if we have no error, then we will check this out, right? So we define our try, and inside the exception, I forget to bring here the E. All right, and inside those exceptions, I have to see, that means if there is no token generated, so I need to pass here the response of data. That means that data should be null. All right, so next we have to also pass the response code, which means 500. So let's give it the pass the 500 the code request, and next we have to pass the message. So the message that I need to pass, that let's give it the could not create token. All right, so that's fine for the case if that token is not generated. But if the credentials were wrong, so I need to first pass the status. So let's pass the status of 0, and we have to give it the code of 401, and we have to pass the message of email or password is incorrect. All right, so that's fine. And I also need to pass the data should be null, right? So that's fine, right? So now everything that we define here, if the credentials were wrong or if there is no token generated, now we have to check if that user is authenticated, right? So let's define here user, and with the help of auth method, we are able to get the user. So we get the auth user information. We have to pass the token. So let's define the token inside the array, and here so we have to define that token that will claims the user ID. So in order to define the user ID, just simply we have to define here user underscore ID, and let's grab the user object here. So the variable which is the user, all the details are coming from the user variable. So in order to get the ID, we just need to define here ID, and if I need to get the email, so all I need to define here email, and let's get the dollar user the email. All right, so that's fine, and that's not over yet. We have to also check if that attempt of the credentials were correct. So let's define the credentials, and that's it, right? Okay, so that case we are able to generate the token, and we have to now check, we have defined the response, and I need to just copy that all. Now we have to define here the first, let's define the data. I need to just bring this on top actually. So the data, which should be the data that we are getting, so this data has all the token inside here, and then we have to give it the status of 1, which means that it's logged in successfully. The code should be 200, and the message should be logged in successfully. So login successfully, and then we have to simply return the response in JSON $response. So just like that, I need to just copy that response and pass it to the email or password which is incorrect, and same case for the if the token is not created, right? So that's fine, and let's test this out first, if just to check this out everything is working fine or not. All right, so now I need to change that route to /API/login, and now if I just try to remove this name, because we only need email and the password, and let's send the request, and you see now it's registered successfully. We have the token, we have the status of 1 and the code of 200, and the message which means it's logged in successfully. So let's try with these wrong password, and you see it says the email or password is incorrect, or if I just define something here email, just change that email which is still incorrect, so it's working fine. And now let's log in with the John just to check this out. So john@gmail.com, and let's try to log in with here, and it's also logged in successfully. So just copy that the token that we get. So just copy that token, and all I just want to show you one thing here. If you go to the JWT.io, and all I need here are, it should be, yeah, so just pass here inside this information. So it will give you, it will encode the token, and decode form you could see we have the issuer, we have the issued at, the date, the user ID, the email. So every information that you can get with the help of this encoded token, right? So that's really helpful for you. You see, we can, with the help of the signature, we are able to get the headers, we can get the payload and the verified signature. So these are all the three information that we are able to get, which makes things very much authenticated and protected, right? So I hope you guys learned something about for the authentication as well as the registration. And now this API is created successfully, and now the next thing we are going to do with the help of the front end, which we are using Angular, and we are going to create our form and do some registration and the login process in the next coming parts, right? So that's it for this video, and I will see you guys in the next one.